Oh, did you actually decide to watch it again? Because you told me last time that you wasn't gonna bother.
You okay there? You okay there? You okay there? You okay there? Did I just knock the volume because you went awful quiet? Yeah, I can hear you now.
Hello and welcome to the Pod of the Damned. I'm your host Ian, and joining me as always is my co-host Nico. How's it going, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. How's your mouldy wall?
It's not a mouldy wall. It's the camera. Look,
Aha.
the
Nico.
mold moves.
Nico's.
I don't know how to get fucking fixed. I've cleaned it and everything. It's not fucking working. I'm like, what the fuck?
It's maybe the seal on it is damaged and stuff's gotten on the inside.
Oh, great. So I'm not managing that then. Look, if you look, I've got a mouldy forehead now.
Aye, well, that's both on and off camera, Nico.
Oh, right. I can't
was
believe we're doing this.
was that a bit mean?
No, I'm regretting doing this. How am I still managing to do this? I thought Boomer was taking over for me.
Aye. Well, Boomer was unable to do so. Anyways, let's move on. Welcome to the Pod of the Damned. We are a horror podcast that deep dives into a different topic every week in our quest to create a leaderboard of the best and worst horror movies of all time. This is episode number 74, and I don't know if you guys have noticed, but Nico is so excited about this one. In today's show, we're talking all about the Blair Witch Project, as he just slides off screen. Before we get into it, we'll do the housekeeping though. If you would like to support us on our social media, you can do so. We're on Twitter at Damned Podcast, Facebook and Instagram is Pod of the Damned. You can email us at podofthedamned@gmail.com, and you can subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/Pod of the Damned. This is now our third live show. Nico, your second one. For all of you that are watching and listening, we do want your feedback on how you think the live shows are going, if you prefer them, what you like about them, what you don't like about them. So feel free to send us messages on our social medias, DM us, chat here in the chat, send us emails, do whatever you like. We want your feedback. So please do get in touch with us about that. I've personally enjoyed doing them. Nico, I think you had a bit of fun. You had fun last week, didn't you?
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. You notice how his voice went really high pitched.
Yeah, I am slightly ill. I will
apologize. It's so much fun.
It'll go high and low all the time because my throat is fucked.
Yeah. I think we're all just a bit like struggling a little bit. This might be a bit of a struggle on an episode, especially considering it is one of Nico's all-time favorite films. Just to go over once again, for anyone who is watching live in the chat, all of our sound alerts, etc. on Twitch are currently switched off. If you do follow, sub, raid, whatever, we thank you very much in advance, and I will catch up with all of that at the end of the actual podcast recording. At the end of the main portion of the show, remember, don't go anywhere, because we will have a brand new segment. It's an old segment we used to do, Nico, that we're bringing back just for the live audience.
Oh, dear God.
It's our controversy corner. We're calling it, Nico.
Okay.
It's basically our old horror hot take segment.
I remember that, yeah.
You used to like that, Nico?
I did. It was great, but today I'm just ill.
Today you're just ill, but Nico used to just like telling people how wrong they were.
Yeah, I will do the same again. It's fine.
I don't know. I think there's going to be one or two in there that you might agree with.
Like this movie shit. Oh shit! Spoiler alert.
Okay. So Blair Witch Project this week was my choice. Nico, you got last week's pick, and I had to say, it's one of the few movies that I've picked that I've kind of known Nico's general thoughts on it going in, and I'm not gonna lie, that is probably about 90% of the reason that I did pick this movie.
I guessed it was that. Yeah.
In fairness, obviously, sort of around the turn of the year, we were asking a lot of people, for movie requests and things that they want to see us cover, and the Blair Witch Project was one that popped up. And it is worth noticing that sometimes people do want us to cover movies that they don't like as much as they want us to cover movies that they do like, because, you know yourself, Nico, sometimes it's actually more fun ripping a movie apart than it is to, talk about movies that you love. And sometimes when you're talking about films that you love, there's only sometimes so much that you can actually say about it. So it'll be, I'm really interested to see what you've got to say about the Blair Witch.
Do you want to know how much I feel about this movie?
Go for it.
You know how I normally always have it on in the background, the movie that we're actually going to be doing?
Yes.
2 seconds.
Oh. Is it not on?
The TV's not even fucking on. There's no way it's going on again.
Wow. So there you go. You're not even watching it in the background.
Yeah, I've always got it on in the background.
You do always have your movies on in the background. But anyways, so those are the kind of reasons why I decided to pick the Blair Witch Project. Now, Nico, this is the 70th movie we've covered on the show. As we've obviously previously discussed, you're pretty much familiar with our leaderboard. Your personal opinion aside, because obviously you're predicting, the average, how everyone else as well. Where do you think the Blair Witch Project is gonna come on the leaderboard?
See, I remember everyone going daft about this movie and loving it and saying it was the best thing ever created. So I was always the odd man out about it. So I've got a funny feeling it'll hit like a 7-ish.
7-ish.
Yeah,
So that would put it in around 33rd place with alongside The Conjuring, Doctor Sleep, and Slither.
I'd watch all of those over this.
Well, there's at least one of those movies that I wouldn't watch over this. I wonder if you could guess which one it is.
Slither.
Yeah, that's it. It's Slither.
Yeah,
Um.
saw that.
Anyways, shall we get into it, Nico?
Yes, let's.
Because you're just dying to. I know you are.
Spoiler alert, you can tell it's going to be a low score for me. Anyway,
There's definitely going to be a 0 and a 1 in it, potentially.
it's not going to be a 10, I'll tell you that.
Okay, we are talking all about the Blair Witch Project. This movie was released in 1999, was written by Daniel Myrick, I think that's how you say it, Eduardo Sanchez and Heather Donahue, was directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, and stars Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, and Joshua Leonard. The IMDb plot is as follows. 3 film students vanish after travelling into a Maryland forest to film a documentary on the local Blair Witch legend, leaving only their footage behind. So, the Blair Witch Project, Nico, is probably the most famous found footage movie. Just your personal opinions on it aside,
I know
it has.
It is the most famous. Yeah.
Whilst it's obviously not the first found footage movie, there were others that came before it. It's definitely the movie that popularized the genre, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, like I'll give it this, right? If it wasn't for this, you wouldn't have some actual decent found footage ones. I quite like found footage ones, but I remember the first time I saw this in a cinema, and this is the thing. I was 18, I think it was when this came out.
Yeah, that'd be about
So
right.
so yeah, I was on a lot of dates seeing this,
I,
and
I,
it was hell for me every single time.
I'm starting to notice a pattern with your stories of how you came about watching movies. A lot
I
of them are,
did. I had a view. Well, what's the Virgin card they were called at that time? You know, Virgin Mega stores. So you get
yeah,
cheap DVDs, and you would get like the cinema thing. It was the combined one I had.
yeah. Nico had a Virgin card.
Hey,
He still has it.
it was the greatest card in the world. All the movies were fucking totally free. It was a
No,
tenner, I think it was.
no one's ever said that the Virgin card is the greatest card in the world.
But the thing is, it got you cheap DVDs as well.
I'm not sure Nico's really getting the joke, to be honest.
I am. I'm just ignoring you.
No, I used to have a Cineworld card, which obviously was slightly different, but yeah, it was good being able to essentially go see all these movies for free.
Because Virgin was the first one to do that in the UK,
Yeah.
and it was down at the beach in Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So it was the best and newest cinema at the time as well.
Hmm?
So put it this way, you watched 2 movies in a month and it covered the price of your card.
How much? How well did your dates go for the Blair Witch Project?
9 times out of 10, I was knocking the face off it by then because I didn't give a fuck about the movie.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so we're obviously talking about like this being one of the most famous found footage movies out there. You've obviously said in general. Well, I say in general. There are found footage movies out there that you like. In general, what is your overall opinion on found footage?
I like found footage, like VHS and stuff. I like that. And there's ones like that are really good. But I don't know. See this one? It's like I know you're meant to be acting like you can't act. It's meant to be real. But their acting is that bad in this movie. It's just fucking awful. Like everyone's like, "Oh, it makes you feel like you're there. It's so good." There's not once I felt like, yeah. At one point, I'm like, "Can they not just die already?" You know what I mean? like you don't feel for any of the characters or anything. There's not really that much jump scares either. In found footage, you've got to have a lot of good jump scares.
Do you think the fact that there's not a lot of jump scares in this harms it?
Yes. Because found footage, if you're doing found footage, that's the perfect time to do jump scares because you want to suck your audience in. You
Oh.
want them to feel like they're there,
Mm-hmm.
and you want them to feel like they're the person that's getting hunted. In this, you're like, yeah, I've went camping and I'm camping with fucking morons.
I don't know. Like, I don't mind the fact that there's no jump scares in this, because sometimes I feel like a movie with the jump scares sometimes can like be the pressure valve of the tension, and I feel like in this movie, they're obviously trying to sort of ratchet up the tension as it goes
Well, there's
on.
no tension.
What they're that's a matter of opinion. Um, I feel that there's tension in this movie, and they're obviously trying to build that as time goes on. And I feel like if there'd been jump scares in here, then that potentially would have made it even worse for you.
Maybe, but the best thing about this movie isn't scary movie when it's the fucking bloop bloop scene. That is genuinely the only good thing about this.
You are aware when they made Scary Movie, that's what they called it. They called it the bloop bloop scene.
Fuck off, really.
No, I don't fucking know.
That would have been so funny if it was.
I can't believe you bought that.
I thought you were being serious because you know weird facts sometimes.
I do know weird fact. You're right. No. That's good. So the best thing about this movie is something that happened in a different movie. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because at least that one's funny. And this, when she's zooming in, going, "It's my project." Ah, fuck off and die.
Oh, that in that movie, she sounds very suspiciously like her from Silent Hill.
Does she really?
Does I? So obviously you've said there, you mentioned VHS there as being sort of one of the found footage movies that you like. Obviously, VHS has gone on to become a pretty successful franchise. Personally, I think VHS is varying degrees of success in their segments. I think there's some that's a lot better. The thing, like, found footage, to be honest, isn't really a subgenre of horror that's particularly high up on my like list. It's probably down near the bottom end of subgenres for me.
What's your favourite found footage one?
Wreck.
Yeah, actually, that's high up there on mine as well.
Like Wreck is one of the few found footage movies that I think is really exceptional.
Yeah.
So, as I said, in general, I don't particularly enjoy the found footage genre. It doesn't do a huge amount for me, but I think the ones that are done really well are really good. But I don't really think there's that like middle ground.
Yeah.
I think they're either really good or they're absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
And
like this is like, it's not really good and it's not really bad. It's just meh. It's mediocre in my opinion. You know what I mean?
So you what you're saying essentially is that Blair Witch Project for you is that one thing that we always talk about, that it's the worst possible thing it can be. It's boring.
Yes. And I had to see this multiple times.
See, I disagree. I think that the Blair Witch Project is one of the ones that's done really well. I'm sorry, I know
Really?
I do. I just do, and I'll get into my reasons why as the episodes as we go on, because I do.
I would like to hear your reasons.
Well, I have some reasons. Listen, I don't think this movie is by any means perfect. It's certainly not gonna ever be in my like sort of list of movies I must show everyone, like, you know what I mean, like it's never gonna be one of them that I credit as being one of my absolute favorites. It's not even my favorite found footage movie. I just think this movie in general is done pretty well, with some stuff in there that I wish was done a bit better. But before we move on, I just want to get your opinions on some other found footage movies, because I just made up a short list to see, where we're sort of at with them. So you've obviously mentioned VHS, which was on my list. I've mentioned Wreck, which for me is the best found footage movie there is. But you've also got things like Unfriended, which is like a different style
Yeah.
of found footage, and same with Host
Like,
that came
see
out a couple
that
of years ago.
builds the tension. That builds the tension really well.
Well, what did you prefer, Unfriended or Host?
I preferred Host
Yeah,
out of those two,
I preferred
but
Host as well.
I do think Unfriended builds the tension a lot quicker and a lot better.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, you got to remember as well, Host, they had. I think the impressive thing about Host was, they had to do that during a pandemic,
Yeah,
and obviously all the issues that came with that.
I do prefer Host.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
I mean,
saying.
so do I, and I think the only issue I think for Host is obviously there was a huge deal made about it at the time, um, but I think that's now going to become a movie of its time.
Yeah,
And that's unfortunate that it's only been, what, 3 years since that movie came out, and it's kind of already a movie of its time, which I
yeah.
think is, it's a shame because it is a good movie and in my opinion, it's a good movie anyway.
Until
Um,
the next pandemic.
let's hope not. Okay, Cloverfield.
Cloverfield, yes,
Right, you see,
but
no,
the follow-ups are gosh.
you think? Oh no! See, right. Okay, here we go. Because I much prefer 10 Cloverfield Lane to
See, I
Cloverfield.
did. I did prefer the second one, but then I rewatched the first one, and I was getting sucked in. I don't know
No,
how.
wish
I was
I,
getting, I was getting proper drawn into it.
wish I,
Sitting what?
you
Was there
dirty
enough
boy,
innuendo?
you dirty, dirty boy.
I've actually got trousers on this time, so I'm not that dirty.
You had trousers on last time.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
Mm-mm.
Anyways, carry on.
So yeah, no, I forgot what I was saying now.
You got sucked into Cloverfield.
Oh yeah. So no, yeah, like the found footage in Cloverfield, the way that they do it, I quite liked it, but I sort of wanted to see it run alongside like a Godzilla movie, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, fair.
I, I would have liked it if that was sort of like in the corner of the fucking box. This is the folk trying to escape if it was actually happening.
No, I much preferred 10 Cloverfield Lane, to be honest. I just feel like you had John Goodman, who gave a really great performance in that movie. It was really claustrophobic. It was really tightly shot. I just really, really enjoyed that movie. Anyways, so I'm moving on because I've got a couple more to go through. Paranormal Activity.
Mm, see, I sort of liked it the first time I watched it, but it's one of those movies you rewatch and you just think it's shit.
I think, and one of the things we'll get into with Blair Witch is the marketing campaign, and what they did with their budgets, and we'll talk all about that. Paranormal Activity was like the next movie to really do that, to make something for virtually no money, and then for it to just explode, because there's no denying this. Again, you can criticize this movie all you want, you'll never be able to deny the actual financial success of
Oh
the
yeah.
Blair Witch Project, and the same thing will go for Paranormal Activity and the franchise that went on to spawn, which for me the majority is absolutely horrendous.
Was Paranormal Activity the one where it was like a friend meeting like Zoom call thing,
No,
and
that's
they
Unfriended.
was that Unfriended that had that as the marketing?
Paranormal Activity is the security cameras in the
Oh no,
home.
no, I know what the movie is. I'm saying the marketing for it. There,
Oh,
there, there was one of them had marketing for it where it was like Zoom calls like this, and basically they had a filter that they would start changing a demon thing. Pretty sure it was Paranormal Activity, was it not?
was that not a host?
Was it?
I
Can't remember, but I thought it was the best marketing tool
Yeah.
ever.
Anyways, guys, like, so you've got one of the ones that came before Blair Witch Project, Cannibal Holocaust.
Meh,
Yeah.
that's just shit.
You've got Lake Mungo.
Don't think I've seen that
Not
one.
seen one. I quite like that one actually. So yeah, so again, there you go. So there was just a few examples of the sort of varying levels, I think, of found footage movies, and for me, the issue will always just be there's so much more bad than there is good,
Yeah,
and a movie being found footage will never get me excited to see it. if that makes
See,
sense.
I think the anthology ones are the better ones in that group
But things like
because
VHS.
because those type of ones, it gives you that whole, well, if this one's shit, the next one could be better.
Yeah, but I think the problem is because I think the problem with like VHS, for example, is there are more bad than good in each of
There,
the movies for me. Don't get me wrong, some of
right?
this there are some segments in there that I think are, you know, really positive and really well done. Um I also just think, like, especially with the original one, I've not seen some of the later sequels in there, so I can't really comment on those. But especially with that first one, the order of the segment seems really weird as well.
But I like that. It sort of puts you off it at the same time as being
I
like,
don't really want to be
what the
put. I
fuck am
don't
I
want to.
watching?
I really don't want to be put off the movies that I'm trying to watch, though. If I'm trying to watch a movie to enjoy it, I don't want the movie to try and put me off.
But I think it's because the movie's trying to put you off character. You know what I mean? It's trying to throw you off balance.
Hmm.
That's what I quite like about them.
Hmm. Nah.
Genuinely, I do think that's the way that they try to do it in that.
Okay. Anyways, let's talk about the Blair Witch Project. Obviously, we've got the story. It's about this three people who are creating a documentary around the Blair Witch, and they essentially get lost in the woods. Now,
Yeah.
this one of the things we always say, and it's especially when it comes to sort of villains, and if you look at some of the movies that we've reviewed, I'm thinking specifically about, you know, things like Hellraiser, for example.
Yeah.
Less is more.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to overuse your villains. In
Yeah.
this movie, there is no villain. Really,
Yeah.
we never get to see any kind of villain.
Yeah.
Um, Everything is just sound and obviously our three characters.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I kind of think it's a bit of a stroke of genius.
Mm. See, this is why when this came out, everyone had their own theory about the movie, and that propelled it even more because Merfolk rewatched it.
But do you not think that's great?
No, because fucking annoyed me.
How?
Like,
How can that annoy you? That's great, because that's what we want in our horror movies.
I,
We want our imaginations running wild. We want it to mean something different for everyone, and for everyone to create their own sort of worst thoughts and worst opinions, and you know, about what could possibly be out there. If we had been shown glimpses, I think, in this, I think it would have made this a less successful movie because like no one's imagination could then run wild.
see, I think they did it better in the second one, where like they didn't have a villain, and you thought all the way through the villain's the witch in that one,
Mm-hmm.
the dame that they all think is the witch. But at the end, you see the footage, and it proves that the witch just corrupted them all, making them think she was a witch. So that one's not got a villain, but did it better, I think. This one, on the other hand, you don't see it, so everyone's got a theory. There's a time travel theory, which is the one that I used to think. There's all that shit,
Well, do you want
and
to go over the time travel theory?
it's basically the witches moving them back and forth in time. So hence, the boy that kills the kids is the one that kills them.
But another thing, a theory, is that there is no witch
Yeah,
and there is no villains, and these guys are actually just doing it to themselves,
yeah.
and
Which the
that's
second one explored more, and I like that.
that's the theory that I generally subscribe to
Yeah,
when it comes to this movie, is that there is no witch, that it is these guys doing it to themselves. They've gotten either lost in the woods and, you know, through food and sleep and tiredness, they've lost their minds, and you know, they've sort of turned on each other, and that's where we are. And
yeah.
that's the, like I say, that's the theory that I subscribe to about this movie. But I just can't I can't disagree with you more. The ability to allow your audience to really run with their own theories about what is out there, what is happening to these people. It is for me, in terms of your marketing, your work, because remember, again, 1999, so a lot of the marketing and a lot of the success of this is based on word of mouth,
Mm.
and that for me is just the perfect way to do it.
Yeah, like I understand where you're coming from, but I like a payoff of being right or wrong. You know what I mean?
But not everything needs a definitive payoff.
No, but I like that. I like being, haha, I was right, you cunt, or all right, I was wrong, pal.
But
Sorry. I
the
quite like that.
but the success of this movie will prove that you're in the minority there. When it
I always
comes
said
when
I'm
it
in the minority about this
No, no,
movie
no,
because
I know, and you're entitled to your obviously your opinion,
uh,
but
but I was there at the height of when this was going mental at the age of 18 when everyone thought this was the best thing that ever came out. And I was very in the minority when I was talking to people about it and they were like, you can't say it's shit because of this, you can't say it's shit because of that. And they would say different things to me and I would just be like, well, I think it's shit because of these reasons and that's why. And they would still just fucking, well, you're wrong. I just there's something in the core of this movie that I just hate. The acting is absolutely below par. There is not one of them that is decent at acting in this movie.
is it like you? But you've kind of already alluded to the fact that that's kind of the point.
Yeah, but the fact is, I get that that's what they're going for. It's like meant to be real. It's meant to be people in the street that's just done this. Like it's people like you and me that's went to the forest and done this. Meant to be. It's meant to draw you in that way. But these cunts are that bad at acting. You just like really fuck off. There's no way. Like none of these people I ever think have been competent in their life apart from this movie.
But again, well, then maybe that you know, again, isn't that maybe kind of a touch of genius?
No, because
Because you want
that
the point of this is that your characters are on screen, they're uncomfortable, they're irritable, and you know when we'll get into, you know, the sort of filming technique of this movie, if you will, but that's absolutely what the creators of this movie wanted. Bearing in mind
yeah
that Heather Donahue, who's one of our three on-screen characters, is one of the writers of this movie as well.
yeah.
So that's absolutely what they wanted.
I understand that, but this is just not my cup of tea. This movie. This is just it's annoying.
Okay.
It's boring. It's bleh. It's like a good horror movie has to have either a great villain that you end up either despising or rooting for. There's not that in this. You've got to feel for the characters and be scared for them. I don't feel that at all. You've got to have a hero or a heroine that you're rooting for, even if they turn at the end. You're still rooting for them through the movie. You want to be by their side. You want them protecting you. There's none of that. This just it feels like yeah, let's go to the woods and see what we can do for a movie. Oh well, that'll do. Let's see what we can do with it. Oh, we'll market it good, and that's it.
I mean, this movie is absolutely the poster child for good marketing.
Aye,
um, what I will say, because you know I like to be fair, Nico, I will agree with you that there is absolutely no one to root for in this film, and it is one
yeah,
of the biggest negatives I have about this film. We have there are no likable characters. There's no one to relate to. They're all pretty. I don't even know if annoying's the word. They're all just pretty bland. And yeah,
yeah,
you know what? I'll just say annoying. I think that, yeah, they kind of are, aren't they? And
yeah,
I think that for me is the biggest drawback to this film, is that
uh,
fact, because like you say, you either have to have a villain, which people love, and you know there's a reason why franchises like A Nightmare on Elm Street and franchises like Friday the 13th and Halloween and Scream and all of these things, despite the
Chucky.
fact Child's Play, exactly, despite the fact you can sit there and think that they like 90% of those movies are trash, and
Yeah,
to an extent you'd be kind of right. A lot of those movies are trash,
Yeah.
really bad. However, there's a hero in there, or sorry, not hero, a villain in there that everybody loves,
Yeah.
and they will always be successful because of that. Tell me a Halloween movie that, or a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, or a Friday the 13th movie that that never gets talked about, that's just forgotten by the horror fandom. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, the Blair Witch Project, because of its marketing campaign and because of its sort of viral success, will also have that. But if it didn't have that, this movie would have just faded away.
Yeah.
It's the marketing around this movie that's what's really made this stay. And because of that, and because it popularized the found footage genre, the Blair Witch Project is one of those movies that everyone has to see at least once.
I get that, but I genuinely do prefer the remake they did. Because
But
at least the folk in it can fucking act.
well, is that the only reason you prefer the remake?
It's shot better. It seems more like found footage than this. This just feels like it's grainy for the sake of being grainy. This
I,
feels like it's just a couple of students went into the wood and made a movie that they thought would be good.
yeah. I mean, we say it's a remake. It's not strictly a remake.
It's a reboot sort
it's
of
a
thing,
it's
isn't
a requel,
it?
isn't it? Yeah, because they're searching for Heather, aren't they? In the I say the new one. It's 2016. It came out.
2016. I'm trying to remember because I only saw that for the first time because I accidentally watched it instead of this one,
Yeah.
and I genuinely preferred that. I'm like, uh, and this is how bad this one is, right? It took me about 20 minutes to realize I was watching another film, and, 20 minutes into it, I'm like, this is better. Why am I watching this? What the fuck is this? And I end up finishing watching that
you are
just because it was better.
you are very much in the minority
I know, I
of
know I am.
of people. Again, I know you know. I'm just continuing to point out how, in the minority you actually are with your.
Trust me, I was there when it came out. I know how much of them, like this thing, I know folk that voluntarily went in about 5, 6 times in a week to watch it. They thought it was just amazing. They saw different things when they watched it and all this shit. And I'm like, it's boring.
I wonder how many times Boomer went to see this.
Is Boomer a fan?
I don't know. Boomer's not here at the minute. Obviously, we did try and get Boomer on the show. But,
Tried my
Nico
hardest.
tried to tag team out of this episode so hard.
I would have owed him one and went, yeah, I'll do one on yours that you don't want to do.
And I
That's
think he
fine.
was keen. But I'm not sure if he was keen, whether because he liked it or not. I think he was just keen, but I think he had work commitments that meant he couldn't do it. He will be on in a couple of weeks though. Um,
Like,
but yeah,
folk that
because
are watching this right now, are any of them agreeing with me at all? I guarantee there's not one.
no one's agreed with you yet.
And nobody will because I am genuinely in the lowest minority about this.
But because the reason I say that is because Boomer's kind of the king of going to see a movie he likes about 24 times. I think he saw
Yeah,
X a load of times. I think he's seen Evil Dead Rise 7 times. He is the master of just living in the cinema once he finds a movie he likes. So
yeah.
um, anyways, so you would put Blair Witch as one of those few reboots that are better than their original.
Yep, I would put the second one better because the second one, I like the concept of it better.
Well, you're definitely sure in the minority
With that one,
with
yeah,
that
because
one as
everyone that saw
well.
the second one absolutely hated it. They're like, oh, they've totally ruined it. They've done it wrong. They've done this. They've done that. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's the things I liked about the second one that you're saying they've done wrong.
I mean, I think in general people think Blair Witch is better than Book of Shadows, but the Blair
Yeah.
Witch Project is still the one that's credited as being the best one.
See, I would say the first one is the worst one. And it's not often I'll say that about franchises as well, because
Well,
normally the
it's
first
not
one's one of the
often.
better ones.
It's not often that that happens. In general, the first
Yeah,
ones do tend to be the best ones. I can't
yeah.
think of many examples where sequels are better than their original. I would maybe argue that Dream Warriors is better than its original.
Dream Warriors. I'd say Hellraiser.
Yeah, Hellraiser 2 is
Yeah.
I would say ever so slightly though, because Hellraiser is still a
Excuse me.
masterpiece.
Oh yeah, don't get me
Um,
wrong. But yeah,
maybe
Aliens, I'd
Child's
say
Play
is better.
2.
Child's Play 2, that's alright. I prefer, like, is that the one in the military base thing?
No, Child's Play 2 is the one where it ends up in the factory with like the maze of Chucky dolls.
Oh, I thought that was 3.
No, that's 2.
Oh, okay. I quite like 2 then.
We've reviewed 2.
I know. My brain's just not. I'm ill, remember? I'm getting
Oh,
confused.
I'm playing the world's smallest violin for you, Nico.
There's a string you can use. Alright.
Okay, back to the movie because I still have another couple of. We still have some more to talk about.
So you tell me what makes this movie good then.
Well, I've already explained one of the things that I really love about this movie is the fact that we do not get to see any villain of any kind.
Yeah.
I think that's a stroke of genius. I think it allows the audience to let their imaginations run wild, which when you're making a movie for as little money as this is an incredible thing to achieve.
Yeah.
I think that like, and I know you don't like the acting. I know you don't like how this is shot.
Yeah.
But again, when you're making a movie for so little money, to achieve what they have created is incredible.
I understand that. I'm not saying it's not incredible what they did, but it's just meh.
I mean, so well let's go for like I'll give away some of the trivia early because
Okay.
let's talk about money because I think you can't really analyze Blair Witch Project without talking about the finances and the marketing. You
Yeah.
just can't because it's absolutely integral. So, the Blair Witch Project, according to IMDb, was made for 60 grand, $60,000, and grossed $248.6 million. Like,
Yeah.
it is astronomical the success of this movie, and I don't think anything surpassed that until Paranormal Activity. I think Paranormal Activity did surpass it in terms of return. I could be wrong. Let me double check that one actually.
I thought it was still like one of the highest ones for.
Oh, it's absolutely one of the highest ones. I think
I thought.
it will always be that, but I think Paranormal Activity was even well. Paranormal Activity didn't make as much money, so I'm technically wrong. So, Paranormal Activity made 193 million. But Paranormal Activity was only made for 15 grand. So I actually had a quarter of the budget of the Blair Witch Project.
But still.
And I think one of the things, you're obviously talking about Blair Witch, the 2016 movie, that you said that had a budget of 5 million. So of course that movie's going to be better shot. They're going to be able to hire people that are better, more qualified actors.
Can actually act, yeah.
You're making a film for 60 grand. You're not going to get, actual celebrities, actual people who have got track records.
I don't mean that, but at least do a bit of casting and don't get your mates involved. That's what this feels like.
But it's 60 grand. You can't afford to do casting.
I get the whole thing where it's like, oh, it's so good for how much money it was made for and all that shit. But yeah, this is genuinely a marketing machine behind this, made this movie. That's the way I look at it. Because put it this way, if this was put up against any other horror franchise, can you tell me the one that's fucking worse than this?
That's worse than this?
As a franchise.
I mean, it's hard to really qualify this as a franchise, is it? There's only 2 movies and a reboot.
3 movies?
2 movies and a reboot.
So you got 3 movies, so it's trying to be a franchise.
I mean, there's probably worse horror movies franchises out there.
I can't think of any apart from Trolls.
Leprechaun?
I quite like it.
Seriously.
It was the only thing that used to terrify me as a kid was that little bastard.
Um, I mean, again, it's difficult. Like, most franchises have a good movie.
Exactly. This doesn't.
Well, I mean, I disagree with that.
Okay. But
I was just
you you say to me that there's things in this that
okay,
make it a good
okay.
movie.
You know what?
There's nothing I've seen that makes it a good movie apart from it made dough.
Okay,
Big whoop, it
you know
didn't
what?
make dough for
Okay, you know
me.
what's the worst franchise? Paranormal Activity.
Actually, yeah, I'll give you that. But that is just as shit as this though.
No, it's not. It's worse because not only yeah, it had its okay movie. I don't even think the first one's the okay one. I think the third one's probably the best one. Um,
Which
but
was the third one again?
it's the one that's after the second one. So I think.
Oh, thanks for that. I don't know,
I
2 seconds.
think the third one's when they go back to the 80s.
I'm just looking it up.
Um, I think the Blair Witch Project is a good film, and
Yeah.
I don't mind the reboot. I'm not a big fan of Book of Shadows, so I think you've got essentially 1.5 good movies out of 3. If you take
No.
something like Paranormal Activity, which has spawned what, like 8 or 9 movies, you've only got, for me,
Yeah, I do
one.
like the third one, by the way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
For me, you've only really got one half decent movie out of 8. That makes that a significantly worse franchise.
Yeah.
So yeah, there.
But
Telt.
it's that basically only became popular because of shit like this, though. If this wasn't on the go, you would never have had Paranormal Activity.
You know what? You know what I think is the worst franchise out there.
Come on, then.
See if you agree with me. Uh, Amityville Horror.
Is that not just heaps of standalone movies, though?
No, there's a main franchise. There are loads of other standalone movies, but there is a main franchise.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, I think there's like 10 movies in it.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
Shit.
So, there you go. Challenge me to come up
Yeah.
with examples. I'll absolutely come up with examples.
But I would rather watch the Amityville Horror with Ryan Reynolds than this shit
Oh,
again.
go fuck yourself, Nico.
I'm not joking. I genuinely would.
Absolutely go fuck yourself with that.
Like, at least the one with Ryan Reynolds, he looks like he's actually going mad.
You know how you've accused Blair Witch Project that they should have done some casting.
Yeah.
I think I need to do some host casting.
Well, it's been a pleasure being on the podcast, guys.
By can I just point out, what are you drinking?
What do you think that is?
Is that Iron Brew?
There you go.
Oh, I couldn't tell if it was Iron Brew or beer.
It's in a Warstein pint glass.
Oh, I thought it was potentially a beer you were drinking.
No.
Well, let's talk about the marketing campaign then, Nico, because that's probably the biggest talking point around the Blair Witch Project. You, like you said, you were there, man, when 18 years old when this came out.
Yeah.
Can you remember what it was like, the marketing campaign? Can you remember the hype about it?
Before this even came out, right, there were folk not sure if it was real or not.
Yeah.
That's what drove it forward. I remember TV presenters talking about it like they'd just seen people die.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, you don't even see people die. So it was just this whole, like, people were genuinely, when I was in the queue to go in to watch it for the first time, and I think I saw it, it was either opening night or night after. So this is cunts that never seen it either. They're going in, and I overheard conversations going, we're going to see folk get gutted. We're going to see folk hung from a tree. We're going to, all this shit was coming out because they'd heard it from, like, interviews and shit. The amount of bullshit about the movie to make you want to go see it was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what drove it forward. And they capitalized on the word of mouth getting it wrong more than actually getting it right.
Well, do you think that fact that people were out there being like, oh, we're gonna see people get gutted, we're gonna see people die, and then to not actually have an on-screen death, do you
Uh,
think that's ultimately harmed the movie?
Not at all. Like, I think that benefited because those were the people that were coming out saying, "Oh my god, that's amazing," yada yada. Whilst me, on the other hand, I was like, "We're not going to go in and see people die. We're not going to go in and see real life people gutted. This is obviously a bullshit one. This is not evidence in an actual ongoing case like somebody else said. You know, I'm walking in going, this is a horror movie, and if they can't understand that, they're slightly fucking special."
Well, why do you think people did believe that?
Because of it was like propaganda about the movie. It was just like, honestly, the amount of critics that were saying it was brilliant but not telling you what it was about. I think they had non-disclosures for some of them. So fucking folk were saying, "Oh yeah, I've seen the movie, but I can't talk about it," which just drove people's imaginations more about it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I get is a great marketing ploy, and it's part of what you liked about the movie. But for me, it was just a case of what the fuck.
Okay. Yeah, I just think it's really interesting. Do you think you couldn't do this now?
Oh, no chance.
Like, and again, that's maybe one of the things that is so, I think, good about this movie. It's so took advantage of where we are or where we were as a society in terms of technological advancements, in terms of what worked, in terms of marketing. It worked so perfectly for its time frame.
Yeah, like I remember folk were talking about there was pictures on the internet, and it was one of the first movies I remember that was doing stuff with the internet. And you'd be waiting for this picture to load for ages and ages, and it would just have the little wee Blair Witch doll in the bottom corner,
Yeah,
and it would just be a fucking forest,
yeah.
and it would be like a grainy picture. There'd be fuck all in it, just the doll thing in the corner, and you had to wait the whole time for that to load. This little wee fucking thing in the corner. You're like, I just wasted fucking half an hour. I'm never getting back in my lifetime.
But it's just weird how it was so able to capture people like that.
Because people were like, people love that whole, oh my god, we know what's happened to them. But in actual fact, you don't know fuck all.
Yeah. I mean,
It's like, take it to like a real life thing. The amount of folk that talk about like Madeleine McCann going missing, the amount of folk that have a theory about that, they weren't there, they had no idea what happened, but every man, his dog has a theory about it.
but people love a conspiracy theory, though.
Uh,
People do love a conspiracy theory, and obviously there's people out there who loves a conspiracy theory more than others. It's like getting a good bit of gossip, isn't it? Not all
yeah.
of us are massive gossips, but everyone loves a good juicy bit of gossip.
Uh, the fact that this marketed itself like it was real really, really helped it because people thought they were really going to see something they found in the forest.
Mm.
Like I remember there was a video that was released before this came out of a copper digging up a tape,
Mm-hmm.
and it was meant to be one of the tapes.
Yeah,
And he's like, found evidence bag, and he literally just digs it up and puts it in an evidence bag. That's it.
yeah.
That was all the marketing they needed, really.
It was just, I mean, kudos to the marketing team for this movie because they absolutely knocked it out the park in
Oh
terms of
yeah,
that. And
that's the reason it's getting points for me. Is the marketing team.
but it is one of the huge pluses of this movie. They created such a hype about it that even if you're like, that's the thing, right? They created such a hype about it that even if you come away from this movie thinking that the actual movie is shit,
Mm-hmm.
you're still going to give the movie loads of credit for what it was able to do in the marketing. So there will
That
be people out
yeah.
there who really don't like the movie, like yourself,
Uh,
but almost feel obliged to be kind about the movie. I don't know if I'm making sense.
oh no, I get exactly what I mean. It's made that much coin. They don't want to be the odd man out saying that they don't like the movie. They'll just go, "Oh, it's actually all right because of this."
I don't even
But in
think
actual
it's. I
fact,
don't even think it's a case of them not wanting to be the odd man out. I think
Oh, there was a lot of that back
No, no,
then.
no. I'm maybe more talking now when we can sit and look back. But I think subconsciously, I think it's a subconscious thing more than a I don't want to be an odd man out thing. I think the marketing is convincing people that the movie is potentially better than what it is.
Yeah, because even after, right? So they changed their marketing after it had come out.
Yeah,
Because they obviously knew people would see it in word of mouth.
yeah.
Which was another stroke of genius, to be honest, by them, because it made the folk that hadn't seen it, well, oh, I know what it's sort of about now, and that actually looks decent.
Mm-hmm.
But in actual fact, it really fucking isn't.
I mean, again, I'll disagree with you because I actually think it is a good movie.
I've said all the things that, like, genuinely, right, it doesn't have a body. So that's one thing you liked. What else did you like about it?
Well, one of the things I like about I really enjoy the pacing of this movie.
See, I think it's drawn out and boring.
You can say it's drawn out. The movie doesn't overstay its welcome whatsoever. It's a really short, tight movie. It only comes in at like 80 minutes.
But it
And,
feels like you're there for about 4 hours.
you know, by the time you take off that opening sort of 10-15 minutes where we're doing the interviews with the locals and, you know, we're in the hotel room and we're establishing them getting into the woods, and the time you take off at the very end for, you know, that period in the middle, you're only really talking about an hour long kind of movie here.
You did just come up with a bit that I did actually like about the movie. I do like the locals being interviewed. That is actually one of the bits I do like in the movie. And the thing is, that was the bits that were released for the marketing as well.
Yeah. Which is really smart because realistically, it's the part of the movie that actually has no real bearing on the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
So you could have just literally released that entire scenes as your marketing, and
Yeah.
you know you're absolutely giving nothing away for the movie.
Uh,
But they're actual locals as well. They're not actors.
uh.
So you know, yeah. Again, you know
And
that's
hence me saying that was a bit I liked more. The actors in the film, the people that are real, made it feel real. But as soon as it got back to the actors, you were just like, oh, really?
I mean, I can't help but notice, Nico, that I'm starting to eke out some positives from you.
No, that's always been the positives I've had about this is the marketing and the locals. That's it.
Okay, if you say so. Well, what do you think? Right.
You almost made me forget about the locals, so yeah. Like
Well,
the old wifey's the best
well, I mean, well, anyways, back to my point was that I just feel, you know, with that segment there, you've also got the ending segment, which I do want to come on to as well. But I just don't feel like this movie is drawn out at all. I couldn't disagree with you more. I think the pacing of this movie is quick. I think this movie goes at a good pace.
one.
I don't really think there's a lull in this movie at all.
Like the ending part, when they do the ending, where it's stand in the corner and then that's it, gone.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what's happened. It's been done before at that point, and I was just like, oh yeah, right, fair enough.
I
A mediocre film, oh, we can't afford to film an ending. Is what I saw that as.
what kind of ending would you have liked from this film?
I would have liked to have seen either the guy come out and kill them, or the witch, or something along that way.
But that defeats the purpose of the entire film, then. The point of this film is that we don't get to see what's
But the
happening. So if they come
that
out in that ending and just reveal all, it totally ruins the movie.
but as I said, it doesn't have anything in it that I liked up until that point. So an ending like that, where you've got to think about it and think, "Oh, what actually happened to them?" By that point, I didn't care about the characters. I hadn't seen a villain. There was nothing in it for me at all, and all I've seen is some cunt standing in a corner and the camera falling to the side. Great ending, in my opinion.
I mean, I think it is a great ending because it absolutely stays true to everything that's happened before.
But yeah, everything that happened before was shit for me.
It doesn't,
So it was
but it
good for
doesn't
you.
matter. It doesn't matter whether you think the movie is shit or not. If your ending is completely tonally off to the rest of the film, then that is a bad ending.
But what I'm saying to you is, right, if you've watched that whole movie and it is totally like that, right, and you've liked it, you will like that ending. I hated it all the way through from minute fucking one near enough. And then to have an ending like that, it was just like, well, that was a waste of fucking time.
But would you not criticize the movie for changing, changing its shifting its tone?
They could have had like a flash of something going past, or like something just getting them, just something knocking the camera over. A black cat walking past, proving that there was a witch there, would have been fucking better than what was actually happening. It was gosh for me, absolutely gosh.
Nico, I can't disagree with you more.
Okay.
I can't disagree with you more. Honestly, I just think if you put something on, if you give anything away at that point, bearing in mind that you are just a few seconds left of this movie, if you spend the entire hour and 20 minutes of this movie, building that tension up, not seeing things, letting your imagination run wild, and then in the final 5 seconds they go, see all that imagination you've just built up? Boom, we've ruined it because there's a fucking ghostly figure. And that to me is totally completely. I know what you're saying, that
Even
it
even
doesn't
if they just
matter.
had
I know what you're saying. It doesn't
even
matter.
if they just had like a hand going to grab one of them past the camera, that would have been better.
No, no, I disagree. I disagree. The thing I like about this movie is that it doesn't ever. It's gonna sound contradictory. It doesn't give you what you want. That is a sigh of defeat.
It's no, the fact is, this movie is trying to make it all about your imagination that
And
you
that's
want, right?
great.
Which I understand is good in some movies, but there's nothing positive to root for through this whole thing. Nothing. Absolutely fuck all. You even said it yourself. There's no relatable characters.
No,
There's
no,
nothing.
I agree with you there. It is one. It's
So,
for me. For me. That's the biggest drawback to this movie.
so at the end, when they're all could be dead, they're all fucking missing the whole fucking shebang. I'm sorry. I would have liked to have seen something that actually got them, so in the next movie you could root for that. Because in my opinion, the characters in it were fucking horrid.
Mm. Um,
Even just a ghostly hand, just fucking, if he's like that and then you just see a hand there, that and then it cut, that would be brilliant.
no, we're never gonna agree about this.
Because here's the thing, right? If you think it's them going mad and they've just went fucking batshit and they're standing in the corner, do you think, well, one of them must have killed the other?
Well, I mean, yeah, you can have that theory, but that's
So
all it is a theory.
do something about it.
No, but if
That's
you
what I
have,
mean.
but you have, like you say, there's so many theories and so many people letting their imaginations run wild, and that's one of the reasons why the movie is such a success. Take that away, you take away the success of the movie.
But this is the thing I'm talking about, right? There's genuinely nothing in this for me at all. I hate this movie with a passion because it is fucking horrid. Like, the best parts about this movie, and it's a famous thing, the clips make the movie for franchises and stuff. If you go in and you're like, this is the start of a movie that you've never seen before, the trailers were the thing back then that you always wanted to see. And the trailers were just interviews of folk. The trailers were just fucking shit like that. And it made it work for getting people there. And then for some reason it was like mass hysteria. They just all loved it. And I was like the one sitting there going, how are you liking this? Like, there's nothing in here positive whatsoever. Like, nothing.
I'm just
The best parts of this were the trailers.
okay. Listen, as we said, we're me. It's very clear at this point that me and you are never ever gonna agree on this movie. We are on two completely different sides of the spectrum, something which we've not really been for a really long time, so wildly opposite. Would it be fair to say, Nico, that this is like, and I'm just really basing this off of obviously movies that we've covered before, because there's a lot out there I still don't know your opinions on, but would it be fair to say that this is potentially one of the biggest movies that you are like the most low on? that
What?
would you say that this is possibly, like, in terms of the size of the film
There we go. Right.
and where it is in, like, for those listening on the for those listening on the download, Nico just got a cat butt to the face.
She did that. I can't believe you. Sorry, what were you saying?
In terms of size of the film, because there is no denying, you can't deny that this is still one of the most famous movies out there in terms of horror. It's up there in its levels of fame because of that marketing campaign, because of some of the points that I've outlined, I believe. Would you say that this is probably one of the biggest movies that you are so low on?
Yeah, I've always said that. This is like the one that made the most money that everyone absolutely loved, and I could not stand.
Fair enough.
I genuinely, like, I've watched this multiple times, and I still don't know why people like it.
I mean, I think you know why people like it. I just don't think you agree with why people like it.
But it's like, I get the principles of why people like it. I get the ideas that they have. I get all the series. I've spoke about folk in groups of folk that were daft about this and all the series that they came out with. And I had my own one on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, but even then, I still thought, nah, it's just not, it's just not for me, like, at all. The way I see this is the equivalent of having a rom-com where you hate both main characters, you don't want them to get together, and at the end of the movie they just go, all right, it was a pleasure meeting you, we'll just be friends, bye.
I mean,
that's what this movie is. It's just mediocre and boring.
I mean, I genuinely do hate the main characters in rom-coms.
But you know what I mean? You're normally rooting for them to get together by the end of it. This one, you're rooting for them to just get run over by a bus.
Well, I mean, you kind of get your wish, though. They die. They like, you know, they don't escape.
But they don't even like have a bang ending. You know what I mean? It was just meh. Hold on.
Is
Sorry, I just ended the podcast there. In fact, that had more effort in it.
Is there any one of the three that you hate the most?
No, because they're, as I said, they're all just fucking bleh.
How do you think you would cope in this situation, Nico?
Well, I think I would have went fucking home a long time ago.
Do you think you'd have been there in the first place?
I'd definitely go there.
Would you have gotten rid of the map?
No.
No. Okay, right.
See, this is the thing, right? In horror movies, you look at horror movies and you think, I might have survived that, I might not. In this one, you're like, I'd have definitely survived this because they're fucking shite.
Okay. Okay.
I've got a great sense of direction. I'd have got home.
Do you, Nico? Because I think I'm done with this movie. But is there anything else positive or negative that we haven't brought up yet about the Blair Witch Project that you would like to bring up?
I would recommend never watching this ever.
I would recommend differently, but I think I'll save those recommendations for when we get to the ratings. Shall we move on then? I think that's probably wise at this point for us to move on. Okay, let's talk about some trivia. I've already done the finances earlier in the episode, but I will quickly just go back over them again. According to IMDb, this movie had a budget of $60,000 and grossed worldwide $248.6 million, making it one of the biggest returns to investment movies of all time.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of trivia, as you would expect about this movie. A lot of it does surround the marketing campaign, but there is some other stuff to talk about. So the scene where all the main actors are sleeping in a tent, and the tent suddenly shakes violently and they all get scared inside the tent, was unscripted, and the actors didn't know what was going on. It was actually the director that shook the tent, and that is genuine fear from the actors.
Yeah.
This is one of the things like me and Candy talked about when we were doing Candyman that I think because that's quite we've talked about quite a lot of movies and there's a lot of movies that have used this sort of technique. How do you feel about directors using this sort of technique of actually scaring their actors?
If it's done right, it works well. Perfect example is Alien.
Yeah. Do you not think it's a bit cruel?
Not at all.
No, I didn't
If
think.
if you want genuine reactions from somebody and they're willing to do it and they've
No,
signed up for it, then do it.
I understand wanting genuine reactions. I understand the theory behind it. But one of the things that Candy brought up was they're actors. That's what they're paid to do.
Yeah.
So if you're doing it for genuine reactions, then you might as well just get anybody off the street.
But what I mean is, there's nothing better than actually seeing true fear coming from an actor's eye.
But they're actors. They're paid to do that.
Yeah.
They're paid to have the ability to do that without actually getting scared.
I understand that, but sometimes
So what's the need?
sometimes it just benefits you. Sometimes it just makes it better. Makes what's on cellulite better than fucking that, you know.
Okay. Anyways, during the filming, the directors kept in touch with our main actors via walkie-talkies to ensure they actually wouldn't get lost during their trek. But they did actually get lost at least 3 times. So they were
actors.
They were actually just idiots.
Yeah.
So that kind of fits into your theory. Heather Donahue's mother received sympathy cards from people who believed that her daughter was actually dead or missing. I hope she pre-warned her mother about this movie and she didn't just randomly get a lot of sympathy cards and actually thought her daughter was dead.
But right, see, right there. This is the thing about this, right? There was one video I remember for this coming attractions, and it was genuinely just what the newspapers and critics were saying about the movie, and in the background was somebody walking through a forest, and the things were saying stuff like scariest thing since I think it was The Omen or The Exorcist or something like that, and it was like best thing that's ever happened. Yeah, all this shit, right? Best thing that's ever happened in horror was basically what this was saying.
Yeah, but there's tons of horror movies use that.
I get that, but then to make it look like they it was an actual found one, and to make them think that it was real and all of that stuff, it just annoyed me.
Okay.
Sorry, it's just I remembered that one in my head, but it was just the fact that it was like scarier since I think it was The Omen. I want to say Omen. I might be wrong and say Exorcist, but it was one of those two. And all I could think to myself is, how are these two films even comparable? One of them is one of the better versions of that type of horror, and then you've got this piece of shit trying to compare itself to it and say it's better. Which slightly offended me as well.
Anyways, I'm moving on because we've still got a little bit of trivia to actually get through.
So,
to promote discord between the actors, the directors deliberately gave them less food each day of shooting, so that they were actually pretty much starving their actors as well.
maybe why it was so boring. They were needing sustenance to actually act.
I mean, this is for me. This is not a good way to go about shooting a film. No, you can't be starving your actors.
They didn't starve them enough.
Jesus Christ. Numerous fans were so convinced of the Blair Witch's existence that they flocked to Maryland in hope of discovering the legend. They apparently did not read the closing credits of the film. The actors were requested to interview the townspeople, who often, unbeknownst to the actors, were planted by the director. So whilst they were townspeople, they were still plants, some of them. Not all of them, but some of them were plants. As a result, the expressions on the actors' face was unrehearsed because they didn't know, obviously, what the townspeople were going to say. Each of the 3 leads were required to sign a release granting the production permission to mess with their heads. The most powerful example of this would be the late night tent attack, which neither of the three actors knew about. So they did actually sign up for it.
Yeah, so it's their own fault.
Their own fault.
They deserve to be starved and scared because they signed up for it.
And here we go. So one of the first theatrical features to make use of a large-scale viral marketing campaign, which claimed that the three main characters had really gone on a trip to shoot a documentary and were never seen again, save for the footage they shot save for the footage they shot being found a year after their disappearances. A website debuted on the internet 1 year prior to the release in order to set up the premise of the documentary, complete with detailed reports of the search, the recovery of the trio's footage within an old cabin, reactions from their families, and expert opinions. The three actors were instructed to refrain from making public appearances. The myth wasn't debunked until after the movie's premiere, but positive word of mouth had already popularized the movie to the extent that its success completely overshadowed that of an almost simultaneously released big-budget horror movie, The Haunting. It's fair to say that The Haunting is a horrendous horror movie as well, which doesn't help. Yeah. So yeah, just to... I know we've talked about the marketing campaign, but that's essentially what that was in a nutshell for people.
But that's what I'm saying. It was one of the first ones to use the internet as well that way. Because
Mm-hmm.
everyone believed everything was 100% true on the internet at that point.
Wait, it's not?
No.
It's not? Oh.
Look at Wikipedia, it'll tell you.
There aren't many hot... there aren't... there are...
You just get that one.
There aren't hundreds of hot women just waiting to meet me.
You can buy your Russian bride on this site.
No,
that was what it was more like back then.
No, I just bought a Latvian one.
Or they're not Ukrainian now.
No, my partner's Latvian.
I got a Czech one.
She's gonna kill me.
Zia's gonna kill me if she hears. Oh no.
Good one. So when Mike tries to force Heather to put down the camera, she actually bit him to get away from her. So they're like biting each other and everything. I don't think these people...
hungry?
I don't think these folks liked each other very much.
No, she was just really, really hungry.
Heather Donahue was initially worried about the shoot because she worried that the directors were planning on making an actual snuff film. Which I find ironic because
she's one of the writers.
She's one of the writers.
Yeah.
And finally, before the film was released, the three main actors were listed as missing, presumed dead on IMDb.
Well, see you saying about them, the snuff film part. I remember folk genuinely thinking it was going to be a snuff film as well.
Yeah.
So the marketing worked for that.
The marketing absolutely worked. We've talked about the marketing at length now about this movie. Of course it worked. It worked to a great degree. Nico, anything?
I'm trying to talk about the positive things. So the marketing was very well done.
I know. I know, Nico. That's you'll rank this movie really highly now. I think we're talking you up.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna just go in the opposite direction now, aren't you? Just to show me.
No, I know what my score is for this movie.
Oh, good. Anyways, is there any other bits of trivia, Nico? Or does anyone in the chat have any trivia that they would like to throw in? Nico, anything from you that you're aware of?
What does the folk in the chat think?
Well, once they type, we'll find out.
No, I'm just meaning, what do they think about this movie? Is it one of their favourites?
Well, we'll get into listener opinions when we get into the next segment because they are very mixed. They're very mixed. Anyways, is that all you've got, Nico? Anything else from you?
Yeah. I reckon I'll have 2 people maximum on my side.
Okay. Well, that being said, we will move on to our final segment of the recorded show, and that is the ratings and the reviews. As always, we will start off with the critics' scores. IMDb gave this movie a 6.5 out of 10. Metacritic scored this movie an 8.1. Nico, what do you think the Rotten Tomatoes critics and the Rotten Tomatoes audience scored this movie?
Critics, about 60.
60?
Yeah. And audience were high on this at the time, and I don't think it's changed, so I'd say about 80 odd. So I'd say 62, 86.
The Rotten Tomatoes critics, Nico,
Yeah.
scored this movie 86% fresh. You got the number, but for the wrong group. The Rotten Tomatoes audience scored this 56%.
I agree with them more.
You got it all back to front though. Critics.
See, I remember the critics liked it, but I didn't know they liked it that much.
Critics' consensus: full of creepy campfire scares, Mock Doc, the Blair Witch Project, keeps audiences in the dark about its titular villain, proving once more that imagination can be as scary as anything on screen.
Sorry, what?
Yeah. As always, we throw it out to our followers, supporters, our listeners, asking for your scores and opinions. And we got, I think it's safe, we got quite a big response to this, and it's safe to say, Nico, that it polarizing it doesn't do it justice to define this. We'll start off with Wren, will be a future guest on the show, friend of the show, because he always writes us a wee novel anyway. And I want to read it out. So Wren says, I saw this film opening night and fell asleep just before the halfway point. A rewatch proved I did it right. At only 81 minutes, this film still feels entirely too long.
I said that.
You did.
I agree so much.
Remove about 20 minutes in the middle to speed up the pacing and you have a much more enjoyable film. As is, it's a boring slog that is bookended by the only important parts. The beginning that foreshadows the end and the legitimately terrifying ending where it plays out. I think there is a nostalgic love for this film because the marketing was so good that it had us believing those three actors were actually dead until they showed up at the MTV Movie Awards. Without that viral marketing, this film is completely lost in the shuffle. I actually prefer Book of Shadows more, and that movie is definitely not good either. 3 out of 10. I think
I'm 100%.
Nico is very much in agreement with Wren.
Pretty much everything I said, exact same.
Well, there you go.
Apart from I didn't fall asleep and I wish I had.
I mean, it's very rare that anyone agrees with you, Nico, so...
Attack! Attack!
Oh... right, moving on. Diabolical Evil Schemes Done Better says, this was so overhyped that I was quite let down when I saw it first. But then I got it on DVD for the extras, and after a rewatch, it really clicked. Many reasons to applaud it, but mainly because there's nothing quite like it. I'd give it a 10.
Started so well.
Finished even better. J Belly gives it a 4 out of 10. The constant shaking only makes me nauseous and hate the director. Doesn't build any suspense, just frustration.
Yes.
Casey says 3 or 4. It was way overhyped. The movie was just plain boring. I found nothing even remotely scary about it. The best thing about the movie was the marketing that surrounded it. Listen, I don't think there's any disagreement that the marketing is the best thing about this. I think 99.9% of horror fans will agree that the marketing is definitely the best thing about this movie. Movies for Days. They give it an 8 out of 10, solid execution and groundbreaking for its time, good performance, inventive sound, iconic and memorable finale, practically invented viral marketing and kicked off a found footage craze we're still feeling today. Yes, this wasn't the first, but it was by far the most successful. Can't argue
I'll
with
give
that.
it the viral marketing thing, yeah.
Can't
Actually, I
argue
would
with
say that this did probably kick that off properly.
Yeah, 100%.
It did it better than anybody else.
Starlight gives it a 7.5. I'm of the age where this premiere was an experience. The chat room discussions, the debate about its legitimacy. We'd never experienced a found footage phenomenon like this. It was such a moment for horror. This influences my rating, but it will always be incredible to me. Man Bites Dog podcast saw it 5 times in the theatre and not once since. Great had to be their experience. And finally, our friends over the House That Screams podcast. A 3 out of 10 from them. I'm no fan of found footage and this wasn't worth the hype. I saw it in a packed theatre on opening night, tried to watch it again on video release and it was so boring. So Nico, you can see there though that completely polarizing.
I never thought there was so much people that agreed with me about
There's
this.
no, but if
Because
you notice there, it's either, twos or threes or sevens or eights. There's no,
yeah,
fives. There's no middle of the roads there.
and it looks like we're the same.
And I think we are going to be the same. On average, after collecting all of our scores from you guys, our listeners gave the Blair Witch Project an average score of 6.2 out of 10. It's really rare, actually. If you look at our leaderboard, if you look at the breakdowns, it's really rare that the audience actually gives a generally lower score than the critics. Our listeners,
Yeah,
anyway. Our listeners,
yeah.
and it's the way it works out. I think our listeners will always be slightly more generous because it's a weighted average of quite a lot of people.
That and they aren't criticizing every single thing that's happening in it.
No, and they're potentially taking more into account nostalgia factor
Yeah,
and other things like that. It's really really rare that um our listener score actually drags a score down a little bit. So
yeah.
that's really interesting to me.
I did notice the one that was like the nostalgia factor about it and all that. I agree with that. Like it was totally an event when you were there. Like
Yeah.
the night I saw it, I've never seen a movie where so much people were that eager to get in and get seated and watch it.
Yeah.
And I just didn't get it, to be honest.
Fair. Anyways, that just leaves me and you, Nico.
Yeah.
The moment of truth. Nico, on a scale of 0 to 10, what will you rate the Blair Witch Project?
I give it 1 for the actual interviews and 1 for the marketing, and that's how much I'll give it.
You're only giving it 1 for the marketing.
Yeah,
That's
because it could piss off with that shit.
But it's the most successful marketing campaign of all time. Surely that's more than 1 point.
No, it's Hitler had good marketing. Would you give him more than 1 point?
For his marketing.
You know what I mean? It's like it was good marketing for its time, but I wouldn't recommend the Nazis for folk. I wouldn't
I
recommend
wouldn't
this.
I wouldn't recommend it either. I think comparing it to the Nazis is a little
I'm just being
you're treading on
just
fine
being just being marketing
you're
wise.
treading on fine lines there, Nico, to be honest. Jesus Christ. Um okay, 2, if that's what you're giving it is a 2, I think that's a ridiculously low score, but
Not at all.
I couldn't disagree with more. For me, listen, is Blair Witch? I've defended Blair Witch Project throughout this entire episode, and I will continue to defend it. Is this the greatest movie out there? No. Is it the greatest found footage movie out there? No. It did, however, have one of the most successful and like someone said earlier, virtually created the viral marketing craze. It credited for that. It absolutely popularized the found footage craze. It wasn't the
Great propaganda.
it wasn't the first, but it certainly was the most popular. And we are still feeling that to this day. We're still getting quite a lot of found footage movies coming out 20 odd years later. So there's no denying the success of that marketing campaign and the influence that this movie has actually had on horror. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And then when I look at this movie in terms of a more what the actual content of this movie, I generally disagree with some of those opinions. I don't think this movie is overlong. I really don't think it overstays its welcome. I think this movie moves at a good pace. I really think they build up the tension very well as the movie goes on. I think we get a quality ending that stays true to the rest of the film and ultimately does that thing where it just lets everyone's imagination run away with themselves. And as again, I think the critics said it is, I think the critics' consensus is what said it. That will always be so much more terrifying than anything that you can put on screen. So, for all those reasons, Nico, I'm gonna give the Blair Witch Project an 8 out of 10.
Sorry.
Um,
So give me like 3 movies you gave a 7 to, because I guarantee they're better than this. Because the only reason you could have gave it that is the marketing.
Let's see. 7 out of 10. I gave Scream a 7 out of 10.
I'd rather watch that.
I'd rather watch Blair Witch. I gave The Strangers a 7 out of 10.
100% definitely watch that.
No, I'd rather watch The Blair Witch. What else have I given us? I gave The Cottage a 7 out of 10.
I'd rather watch that too.
No, I'd rather watch Blair Witch.
This is becoming my catchphrase now. I'd rather watch the new Chucky.
You'd rather watch the new Child's Play. That's funny you say that, because I gave Child's Play 2, I also gave Child's Play 2 an 8 out of 10, so... I think that's really interesting, Nico, because you gave Child's Play 2019 the same score as you've given the Blair Witch Project, so if you would rather watch that, I think in our 101st episode where we're going to revisit scores, you need to revisit your Child's Play score.
Okay, I'll go a 2.1. I said I'd rather watch it, I didn't say it was fucking better.
Oh, damn it. I was hoping that would move it up a place, but it doesn't.
Shira, help me, he doesn't get it, it's shit.
Anyways.
Tell him.
Anyways. It's one of those rare occasions where I'm actually pretty much on board with the critics side of all these scores. Am I turning into an actual critic?
It's looking that way, because by the sound of it, the audience would agree with me a lot.
I mean, there was plenty in there that was agreeing with me as well, though. You can't just take the ones that agree with you and just forget about the people who didn't. There was plenty in there that didn't agree with you.
I heard more slogans.
That's just the ones I chose to read out as well.
Yeah. Most of them were agreeing. Most of them were saying pretty much word for word.
Well, you know what? You know how most of them actually. You know how we know most of them actually agreed with me, because the average score from them is a 6.2, which is a lot closer to my 8 than it is to your 2. So get that up, you Nico.
Shocking. That's why, because of weirdos like you giving it like a 10 out of 10.
I give it an 8. I didn't give it a 10.
But there was folk that gave it a 10.
Yes, man. So I gave it. You can't say weirdos like you that gave it a 10. I give it an 8.
I'm just meaning such high score for such low standard of movie.
I would just
like you take away the marketing from this, and I guarantee it wouldn't have made its budget back.
No, but you can't just say.
That's the only reason this film is a
You
propaganda.
can't just say take something out of a movie. I guarantee it wouldn't have been successful. Take
Not
the most
take it out of the movie.
You guarantee you take the most successful thing about something away. Of course, it's not going to do as well. That's such a redundant comment.
No, what I'm saying is, right, the marketing is advertising. So you take the advertisement away from this film. The advertisement away from this film. Not the actual film itself. And I guarantee...
But the advertisement is part of the film. It's part of the experience. Not really. It is! Not of course it is! Of course it is! It's absolutely... The advertising was part of the experience of this film.
It was, gosh.
No. You're actually, you know what, Nico? You're actually annoying me. I would just like to point out. I like
annoying critics.
I'd just like to point out at this point to anyone who's not familiar with the show. Me and Nico are friends.
We're not now.
It's a question that we have.
Blair Witch broke it.
It's a question that I have been asked multiple times by friends of the show. Are you and Nico actually friends? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I don't think either of us really know why, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
there's a lot more movies we agree on than disagree on, to be honest.
Yeah, there is. Blair Witch Project just happens to not be one of them.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it's in that unique box. It's like the new Child's Play and Doctor Sleep.
It is. Anyways, all of our scores combined with the critics' scores gives the Blair Witch Project an average score of 6.4 out of 10 and puts it in 44th place of the now 70 movies we have done on the show. And I think that's really telling. We're talking about, the polarization of this movie. You love it or you hate it. And the fact is, it's pretty much slap bang there in the middle.
Yeah.
Which, really just proves that the ratings are at the opposite ends of the scale. It
sort of works out.
Yeah, it sort of balances it out. It puts the movie one place below Night Watch and one place above Censor. And that's really funny because Censor was another one of those movies that we were on complete opposite sides of. You also gave Censor a 2, and I gave Censor a 7.5. So it's really interesting that movie is also it's right there with that movie.
I'd rather watch Censor than this.
No. Just no. Okay.
And on that note,
When on that note, that's gonna do it for this week's show. If you're hanging
hold
about,
on. You've normally got the bit where it's other actors could play the. Oh wait, they didn't have a fucking budget. Sorry, bud.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't have a budget and they made fucking $250 million. That's gonna do it for this week's show. If you're kicking about in the live chat, and obviously if you're Nico, stick around because that's not the end of the broadcast, it's just the end of the actual podcast recording segment. But I will say for the purposes of the podcast, he's gone off camera because he's a dick. But Nico, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on again.
No problem. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much as well for sticking around on the download. Don't forget, we will now be broadcasting our episodes live here on our Twitch channel every single week. That's twitch.tv/pod-of-the-damned. But we still will release the podcast on all the usual podcast platforms, usually on a Wednesday, although we released on a Thursday last week. Up next on the show, it's back to Nico's pick, and I don't know if Nico can remember what he's picked.
Didn't we change it?
No, that's weeks in advance, Nico. Okay, do you want me to just tell people?
So we didn't change it.
We've changed a future episode, but not our next one.
Okay, I'm confused then. I thought it was going to be Evil Dead.
No, that's like 4 weeks away.
Oh, okay.
We did discuss this last week.
We did, that's why I'm confused.
Yeah. Up next on the show, we're discussing horns.
I thought that was the one we changed.
No, it's not.
Okay.
I told you last week we couldn't change that because I'd already put out.
Oh yeah, you did actually, yeah. I forgot.
I noticed.
Which movies we changed.
I noticed.
No, I just mixed up which movies were changing.
Yeah, we're covering horns next week, Nico. Without giving too much away, why horns?
Because I'm feeling horny.
Okay. Well, aren't you the listeners really lucky? Don't forget as well, if you also like horror video games, I do a couple of times a week also stream horror video games on this channel, so stick around for those as well. Follow us on Twitter at Damn Podcast. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Pod of the Damned. You can email us at podofthedamned@gmail.com, or you can subscribe to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Pod of the Damned. Don't forget to rate and review us on any of those podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We would really appreciate your ratings. We will read out any reviews that you guys have for the podcast on the show as well. And don't forget to let us know how you feel about our live format. What you like, what you dislike about it. Like I say, you can come into our live chat and talk about it, and we will have a lengthy on-podcast debate with you guys about how wrong yous are. But if you're in the chat, stick around because we're about to bring you our first of our Controversy Corner segments, which are only available on the live show as well. But until that point, Nico, thank you once again for joining me.
Thanks for being on.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone for listening. And don't forget, until next week on the Pod of the Damned, just remember, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
How did that confuse you?
Okay. So that is the podcast recorded. I will say that this week I will be putting out a graphic to request suggestions for an updated catchphrase.
Okay.
That will actually probably go out tomorrow at some point.
Right.
But yeah. Did you enjoy that, Nico?
Fucking hated it.
Did you?
Hated watching it again as well. Just hated I hate everything about this movie, apart from the market.
Okay, well, shall we talk about something else?
Anything else.
Okay.
My cat has now decided to try and pull his tower on top of himself. Alright, fuck off. Like, Jay, I thought was gonna go there. It was fucking like that angle. Like, Jay, what? I'm like, what the fuck? Sorry.
Oh, my little Latvian person is here.
How much did she cost?
Anna, I didn't buy you. Hi, how are you? Anyways, let's.
She missed that, I bet you.
I think she did. Yeah, there's a segment of this episode that you might not want to listen to.
We went on about Russian brides, and both of us have foreign girlfriends. So we basically said we bought you.
I don't know what I don't know what he's talking about. I didn't take any part in that conversation.
Oh wait, you didn't say I got mine from Latvia.
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't say
So
that.
how did I know she's from Latvia?
I have probably told you previously, Nico. We are friends.
Oh,
We
okay.
are friends who
Well,
talk.
yeah, that is probably it. I forgot. You look so uncomfortable right now. It's amazing.
I'm not uncomfortable.
You okay there?
I'm fine. How are you,
Like
Anna?
that bead of sweat right off your forehead.
I have no sweat. Dry forehead. Look. You should feel my arse crack. Anyways,
Not again.
shall we talk about something else?
Okay.
Okay, so let's go and do controversy corner, Nico. And this is basically a revival of our old horror hot take segment.
Okay. Yeah. You okay there? Is it? I can still hear you. Uh-oh.
Let me just go back because I don't quite know how that's happened.
Can they hear me? Because that would be weird if they could. So we're having some technical difficulties. Nobody can hear Ian. It's not for me. It's fucking wonderful.
I'm gonna just quickly nip back and forth for a sec.
That's not good.
Okay,
So,
everyone.
since everyone's been listening
No,
to absolute silence, if you can hear Ian at any point, just let us know as soon as possible. And
they can
until then, you're stuck with me.
they can now hear me.
They can now hear you.
They can now hear me. Anyway, so just for the purposes of those who may be watching this back, Controversy Corner is our new segment. It's basically a revival of an old segment where we get opinions from our listeners and followers that they believe is unpopular surrounding the world of horror. This is something we will throw out onto our social media periodically over the coming weeks to try and garner quite a few. We will go through a few of them on each episode. We'll discuss them, and hopefully, as I was saying, as the show continues to grow, and hopefully we get more and more viewers and listeners on our live episodes, that we'll be able to create some healthy debate. That's essentially the point of Controversy Corner. So we'll kick off, and our first one is from our friends over at the House That Screams podcast. You may be familiar with them. They do a lot of guest spots for us, and I've done a lot of guest spots for them. So they have to Freddy versus Jason is a huge piece of shit. And I literally hate it. I do not understand how any person in their right mind would like it. Also, why the fuck does it have to be included in the Freddy compilations? Nico, what's your thoughts on Freddy versus Jason?
It is so bad, it is good. It's based on the comics, which were fucking epic. It's great.
I actually Nico, here we go. This is how we prove that we're friends once again. I actually completely agree with you. This movie is so bad it's good. I think Freddy vs. Jason is like your classic popcorn, put it on and switch off movie.
It's one of those movies where they've realised they've got two franchises that were dying down a bit. So let's combine them and see what we can do. And there happened to be a comic about that anyway, and I think Ash was in the other one as well.
Mm-hmm.
There was a comic with him in it as
Yeah.
well, and it just made it funny.
This was also wasn't this also the final appearance of Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger?
Try to think. I think it might have been actually.
Yeah, because this came out. It came after New Nightmare, didn't it? Did it?
Yeah, it was definitely after New Nightmare.
So that'll have been his last movie appearance as Freddy Krueger.
Uh,
For me, it's just one of those schlocky slasher films that's just like fun to put on. There's a couple of there's like some funny moments. Don't get me wrong, the movie's fucking terrible.
oh yeah, it's fucking awful.
It's a bad movie, but I have loads of fun when I'm watching it.
Yeah, that's it.
So
Well, that's what you want from a combination. It's like two mammoth monsters. It's like Godzilla versus King Kong.
yeah, it makes no
It's
sense.
you're not going in to basically go, oh, this is actually the best movie ever. You're going in to just switch your brain off and enjoy the fucking carnage.
Well, how do you feel in general about versus movies?
Versus movies, 9 times out of 10, they are going to be that schlocky, fucking cheesy shite because they don't want to ruin either franchise. They don't want to destroy either person.
Yeah.
That's why they do it.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so are we going for the hard disagree there?
Yes.
Sorry. I'm going to assume that's Candy. Sorry, Candy, that's a hard disagree. So we'll move on
Candy, I hate to say it, but you're wrong.
Is that your other new franchise? Insert name here. I hate to say it, but you're wrong. And your other new catchphrase. Okay, we'll move on to...
I've always said you're wrong to people, you know that.
That's true. We'll move on to our next one, which comes from Myths Behind Legends. I don't really like elevated horror films. Midsummer, Hereditary, etc. were a struggle to get through and almost put me right to sleep. That, to be honest, sounds more like you don't like the films of Ari Aster, to be fair.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking, yeah.
So it's maybe more of a directorial issue. I think when it comes to elevated horror, and this phrase, elevated horror, personally, I can't fucking stand the phrase elevated horror. You know, horror movies, you've always had horror movies who, you know, try to have more substance to them and try to, you know, really engage with a theme. You know, things like Hereditary is you know, as a movie, we talked about it recently. It's one of our more recent reviews. You know, that movie is a study on grief. You know, and you're always going to have movies like that. And I think when you're coming to talking about elevated horror, you're probably more talking about the movies at A24.
Yeah.
So, which again, another one we've reviewed recently in X. And I think for me, like most subgenres and sections of horror, there's good and there's bad.
Exactly. And the thing is about the elevated ones, it's reaching a market that a lot of people wouldn't do anyway.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that think horror is just, oh, it's for mindless morons. There's a lot of people still think that.
Yeah, of course
it's
do.
They think that about action movies, they think about comedies, but each to their own what they like. And I quite like the fact that it brings those people into it slightly, and they might try some of the other stuff as well.
It's definitely brought in a new audience of horror. It's made horror for me more accessible.
Yeah.
In the modern time, and that to me is to be applauded.
Yeah.
So I think what we're saying here is, Nico, again, that this is we're sorry, Myths Behind Legends, but you're wrong.
You're wrong. You're wrong.
Oh, please never get that close to the camera again. I want to have some viewers next time. Good. Okay, so next, which is from a friend of the show, the Nightmare Nerd, which is interesting just talking about this. A Nightmare on Elm Street remake is better than it gets credit for.
I agree with that.
Do we? Do we agree with that one?
I do, because like everyone shits on it from a great. I thought it was a very good Fred.
I think, for me, I don't think it's a good Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I will agree. I think
It doesn't get the credit it deserves. Everyone
I
makes out it's like a one or a two,
I
but
think
it's actually,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
I don't think it's a good movie. I just don't think it's as bad as people think it is. Jackie Earl
Yeah,
Haley actually plays, I think, a relatively good Freddy Krueger. However, he was severely let down with the script and the CGI.
yes,
Severely let down by that.
100%.
And I think based on those factors, because you always have that memes, don't you, about how stupid, Jackie Earl Haley looks in that movie.
Yeah,
And it's yeah, it's kind of overshadowed the rest of the movie. They also took it way further in terms of Freddy Krueger's actual count, because he went from being a child killer to an actual child molester.
yeah, but there was always hints about him being a pedo.
Yeah, of course there was, but they take it that step further in this movie and actually explicitly say that. So you've got that difference there as well, and I thought it introduced it introduced some interesting concepts, because in that movie that's where we really sort of start learning about like micro sleeps and things like that, micro naps or
Yeah,
whatever it is they call it. So I actually think that I would agree on this one that yeah, I think it is probably better than it gets credit for. It's never ever going to be considered a great remake though.
yeah. Like, don't get me wrong, I agree with it as well. I do not think it's a great movie, but I do think it's better than what most people say it is. Like most people, everyone I talk to about it, they find nothing good in it.
Yeah.
But I genuinely think he was a very good Freddy. I think introducing him being a pedo as well gives it that whole other creep factor thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I would
But
agree.
everything else in it just let it down.
No, I would agree with that. Okay.
So yeah, we agree. You're correct.
We do agree. There we go. Will we do one more? Our friend Alaska Girl 88 said sometimes fandoms, including the horror fandom, are scarier than anything that's ever put on screen.
Yes.
Yeah, I think. Listen, the you can put on screen is always going to be limited to your number one. The imagination of your directors and actors is going to be limited by your ratings boards in terms of all that of things that you can actually see. What we're talking about here in a fandom is what people are actually capable of, and we know that people are capable of wild, crazy, horrendous shit.
Mm,
So, yeah, again, I would totally agree with that.
yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. For in the large part, I think especially with the horror fandom, there's a lot of really toxic fan bases out there. If you go to like the wrestling fan base, which we're very familiar with, Nico, or sports fan bases, or you know, um, action hero things like that. Like, there's some very toxic fan bases out there. I think the horror fan base in general is actually one of the more pleasant ones.
Yeah, because like you mentioned in the wrestling one, I just find that hysterical how a WWE star can go to AEW and they hate him all of a sudden. Yet the week before they were saying it was the best wrestler they'd ever seen.
Yeah,
I always find shit like that hysterical because it's
yeah,
like the only difference is the letters that is in the company.
yeah,
The
yeah,
person still puts on performances that are amazing, but that's very toxic.
yeah. Um,
It's like
so
a cult sometimes, that fan base.
yeah, so absolutely, I think in general the horror fandom is one of the best ones. But you will always have, excuse me, you will always have those people who either are really pushing the limits of what is acceptable and what's not acceptable, and sometimes people go way over that line.
Yeah, but you're always going to have that, like, people getting pushed that way.
You know, you're always
Especially like the weirdos in fandoms.
yeah, you're always going to have people, really pissing off celebrities at Comic Cons. Nico,
Asking a question,
yeah,
even though you totally agree with that person. That's the thing, right? This is what just I find the most hysterical about that, right? I 100% agreed with what he was saying, but he took it as like a personal attack from me.
It was a personal attack from you, Nico.
It fucking so was.
It was. I never told you to say it.
I was just trying to be nice since you weren't there and see what he thought about it, and that was it. He looked like he wanted to lynch me there and then.
I can't blame him.
Like, he walked past me twice after that and still glared at me. I'm like, okay.
I don't blame him, Nico.
I, I should have paid for an autograph and say, to your biggest fan. No, I'm not that much of a dick, you know?
Okay. Anyways, right. I think we will stop there because we've went through a few, but Controversy Corner will be back next week. Nico, I look forward to talking to you next weekend about horns.
Okay. Not Evil Dead like I thought it was.
Not Evil Dead. Evil Dead's not for a few weeks yet, Nico.
Okay. So what was it we replaced?
We replace Megan.
Oh, okay.
Evil Dead is not for like another 4 weeks. 3 weeks.
Right.
4 weeks. 3 weeks. We have two
How to
movies.
confuse
We
me.
have 2 movies to review before Evil Dead,
Okay. Right. Remind me
which
then.
once again is breaking my we do franchises in order rule. And not only are we not doing them in order, but we're actually jumping because we've started with Army of Darkness and now we're jumping to Evil Dead Rise.
So we've just missed a movie out in the middle of each of them.
We've missed a movie out, and
We,
we've
we
missed.
went first, middle, end. We missed out the middles.
We haven't done the first one.
I thought we did the first one.
No,
Jesus, that hurts my skull.
we've never done Evil Dead. I don't think. I can't believe
Did we
I'm.
do it in the old podcast then?
I did it on the old podcast, not with you though.
Oh, okay. Oh well.
No Evil Dead. We've only done Army of Darkness. Why do you think I was so upset with you when we did Army of Darkness?
I thought it was just because we missed the second one.
No.
I genuinely
Anyways,
thought we done the first one.
right, Nico, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for watching. I will be back on stream probably Wednesday. Will be when I'm back. Because probably won't be on stream tomorrow because I'll obviously need to do editing for this show. But if I have time to do a small one tomorrow, I'll probably
Small one.
a small one.
All right, Sean.
If I have a time to do a small one tomorrow, I maybe do it, but it'll probably be Wednesday. I'll be back on stream, and me and Nico will be back next weekend.
Yes, Miss Moneypenny, we will. Yes.
Yes, we will.
We'll do a small one next week.
So thanks, guys. I'm gonna fire off a small raid, and then we'll get out of here.
What kind of raid?
A small raid.
Oh, you suck.
So yeah, Nico, I will speak to you in the week.
See you later.
And
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. I will catch you all later. So bye for now.
That you done? Okay.